Hi, I'm Liz.
And I'm Rhea.
Welcome to Karma's My Bitch, a podcast about love,
Sex,
connection,
abundance,
joy,
purpose,
peace,
and how life isn't simply the stories we tell ourselves. This is the new set, right? So we've done the first date, which is what happiness is not. We've done the second set, which is what happiness is. Mm-hmm. And now we're on the third set, which is from 17 to 25. And what are these about?
Happiness in relation to things, which is usually how the last chunk of our episodes, however they're partitioned, depending on the season, usually it's the concept as it relates to. It's the concept, right? Like, here's karma. This is how it affects and impacts your inner workings and how you can use it to then change things and shift. And then relationship to someone else, and then a relationship to another, like the world.
Okay, fine. Yeah, so that's why we have the 4 books, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Here are the 7 karmic themes. Here's how to transform your life, how to transform your relationships, how to transform your world.
Yes, precisely.
So we're on the relationships and world bit.
Exactly.
Okay.
But Ray, I'm just going to say one more thing. How many seasons did it take before I ever realized there was an actual pattern to this? I'm just going to say.
11 is the answer. But you know what? They always said that 11 was the final season of the chunk of all this learning in a big way. So actually, this makes sense because we're kind of, like everything else we do in life, we kind of walk in blind, try and figure it out in a vacuum. And then all of a sudden, all the bits make total sense.
Yeah. And, to be fair, I do feel like there was a previous season where we tried to figure it out and we did get it, but it didn't really click.
Yeah.
It takes us a while. And like anybody else, it takes people a while to get a click, like for it to really penetrate. And that's
you need more than one bit. And then I guess the click really is when it's on all bodies.
Yeah, precisely. It's consciousness.
Because once it's clicked, and then that's it, you know it. Mm-hmm. You just know it in every body you have.
Yeah. But as we move through our karmic undoing process, we're supposed to come into this idea that I am enough because I was always enough, right?
Yeah.
And that is such a critical piece, and one that we spend the majority of our lives, if not our entire lifetimes, trying to get back to.
Yeah.
From the time you were a kid and you had all that light to really be able to relive that again, right? As to bring back alive and to make it real is all we're really striving for. But we do, after the karmic undoing process, we have to also understand then, as much as we know that we are enough, we can also then begin to unpick and unpack all the ways in which our lives are not enough anymore because they don't match who we are.
That's true.
They only matched who we were when we didn't think that we were enough. That's true. Yeah. And so that's
a dissonance in some ways, right? Because
precisely.
You come out of your not good enough story and you come into knowing you're enough, but everything that you're doing and everything you're experiencing kind of seems to echo back how you didn't think you were good enough.
Exactly.
And it's very easy to go back there in your mind.
Yeah.
Right? And we talk about that in Karmic Affair. We talk about circles, right? That you kind of, you get stuck in these circles where your mind almost tricks you into believing you are where you used to be.
Yeah, because everything that is surrounding your life is still reflective of that old story.
So what do we do?
Well, first you have to make sure that you have shed enough, or as they said, settle your ego, right? That's part of the karmic undoing process and is often the last piece to go. Yeah. Because it can take a long time. It could take a good while to really settle the ego. And the ego is that part of us that, we call it, it's what the limited mind creates in order to support our not good enough story.
Yeah.
Right? And it's
all the identity stuff. It's
exactly
what I look like, what other people see me as, is how I define myself. And it's all the judgment. It's the labels and stuff. Of course, and I'll definitely caveat, even post-karma, like when you're in your other phases, right? Striving for happiness and clear, vanity is healthy. So it's okay to care about how you look, but not to the point where it's because you want to be unassailable, as in to the point where you do it you care about your attractiveness because you don't want other people to judge your attractiveness. Yeah. Right? Or you care about your attractiveness because you're hiding other bits you don't want people to see.
Exactly. But you care about your attractiveness because you care about yourself. It's reflective of your self-respect. That is the appropriate kind of vanity that we talk about. And pride.
And no one, I'm proud of who I am. I recognize that I am the divine, and this is how I am presenting as the divine in body, right?
Yeah.
Yay, that's cool.
But then how do we move from that? Like, so how do we get from, I know I'm good enough, I don't have an ego anymore.
Yeah, so then that's where detachment and letting go come in, right? Because when you don't have ego...
Letting go?
Yeah, the concept of being able to let go is detachment, right? And when you don't have ego, you're no longer holding on to things. And that allows you to, it's the word that keeps coming. And funny enough, they want to use it, escape your story.
Okay.
Okay. And it's not the not good enough story. It's the circle story you talked about, right? You're breaking your story as you're breaking out of that prison that you created for yourself. You've escaped it then because you're just done. You no longer have any of those tethers or kite strings that keep you trapped in that cage of that old identity.
And how do you do that? How do you cut those kite strings?
Well, what did you
Aside
say?
from pressure cooker and pause moments.
Yeah, which is later, right? But what would you say?
For me, it was really simple. It was just understanding that there was more than one possibility, right? Because our minds like to say that there's only one choice, there's only one reason, or at least there's only one likely reason. So for me, and being someone quite mental as well, and it wasn't about mind games or anything like that. It wasn't about mindfulness or trying to like trick myself. It was simply the acknowledgement that my story might not be the only one that exists. Mm-hmm. To allow for more possibilities outside of that. So from the really stupid stuff of they didn't text you back, not because they hate you, but maybe because they're doing something else. Mm-hmm. Or it's not everyone's mad at you, that they're dealing with their own stuff. Being able to see other reasons that aren't directly affected by you, like impacted by you and your world, actually does two things. On the first level, it allows you to see that your story isn't set in stone. And on the other side, it allows you to see that other people have different motivations that don't surround you, because actually being in one's karma, really miring oneself in their ego, that's it's a selfish endeavor. Mm-hmm. So it allows you to not only step outside of your circle, but it's step outside of yourself.
I'm like, that's really well said. Well done. And
it's like I learned something.
And the reason why we go through that karmic undoing process and why we have the M in our name is magic, right? Then how do you create that life that you actually do want when you do know that you're good enough?
Well, that's because as we define magic in season 8, it's the ability to move from one reality to another. Mm-hmm. So you move from one reality where there is no chocolate cake to one reality where there is. That's the one we used.
Yeah, and the critical key to that, which we didn't quite share, is the fact that it can only come from you when you can operate so fully from your power that only you can create your reality, as in no other circumstance or relationship can actually create another reality for you.
Go on.
So you cannot attach yourself to anything else in order to define your reality like you do in your old karmic life.
For example?
This relationship I have, because I'm in this, like I'm dating, married to whatever, to this person, and that they create, because of their lives, I just step into it and I conform, I adapt, that becomes my life.
So how does that fit with the whole like gold digger, marrying for money?
Well, we never said that those were like relationships. Well, they could be in integrity enough and be born from a kind of respectful place. It does not mean that they are operating from that full higher consciousness plus
Fine.
that is capable of magic.
Fine. So
that's still really like a need, desire-based relationship, but that feeds off of.
It's not like, oh, I want to create a life where I live in a gorgeous house, so I need to marry someone who has a gorgeous house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Although, maybe. That might be the way you do it.
That is not how you do it. Yeah, I mean, yes, you could do that in order to have the house, but that is not you operating from magic.
You're not doing it consciously. It's like, I am marrying this person for their house. No. But I fall in crazy love with someone, and it turns out together we can have this house. Mm-hmm. That's the magic. That's the cherry on top, right? It's not the reason.
No.
Okay, go on.
No. What we're actually saying, only you can create everything for yourself.
So what about those in partnership?
You're creating for yourselves and then you are sharing.
Okay, fine.
But your capacity to magic, well, it could be of benefit for your partner, has nothing to do with them.
You can't magic for someone else.
No. And we have said that, I think, before.
Yeah, no, yeah, fine. Okay, that's different from what I was thinking then. But if, let's say, I really wanted a beautiful house and I magic that for myself,
yeah,
but I'm living with someone else, they would also live in that house with me.
Sure.
Or they wanted a beautiful house, so they magicked it for themselves, and I'm living with them, so I'm also living in that house with them.
Yes.
I didn't magic it for me. They did. I'm just sharing it with them.
Exactly.
That's the difference.
Exactly. Remember, we can't magic other people. You can magic opportunities to meet a person because that's an expression of joy, right? And joy is a critical component in the early stages of magic. Much like fun is an important, fun also plays into magic, but fun is also really important to tap into joy when it comes to our karmic undoing process. So it's all about creating that joy channel. When we're in our karma, complacency is something that we have to break out of. Because we develop a certain level of complacency because we're just trying to survive and we're just trying to make do and we're just trying our best.
And complacency also allows us to just be like, well, what can we do? So that we don't have to face any of the shit that we don't want to see.
Exactly. And so we know that part of undoing our karma is developing that inner power, right? That divinity, tapping into that or whatever. And becoming
that warrior gene for me. That's what I called it earlier today.
Yeah.
When I was like, ooh, I'm starting to feel myself becoming a warrior again.
Yes.
And I was like, ooh, I haven't felt that in a while.
Yeah. Well, not everybody who needs to be in their power or empowered has to have that warrior gene. For you, it feels like that because it's in your nature to want to fight. There are others like me, it feels icky. Because and it's not because I'm a lover, not a fighter. It's just because for
you're too busy Debbie Downering everything.
A heavy dose of reality never hurt anyone, but I'm also
honestly, your pep talks.
You know what? Sadly, I just learned it from my father. It hit me after. I was like, I feel so bad. I just didn't know when to stop.
I was like, I'm sad. You're like, things will get better, but different. And I'm like, oh.
But you know what? And I will say this. For anybody who has a relationship to me, you always know what you're going to get with me. And that is why the few friends I have, that is why they know they can trust me 100%. I'm going to keep it real. And I'm never going to
And it's just so funny because also the way you say it and the way I internalize it is so different because I'm so naturally optimistic. So then I'm like, oh my God, is she meaning doom and gloom? And then it happened. I was like, oh no, I see what she means, but it's great. She just made it sound less great by her word choices.
But if I'm kind of blowing sunshine up your ass and things don't work out a certain way, I never want people to turn around and be like, well, you didn't set my expectations correct.
You're definitely setting people's expectations below. But it's good. That means I love it because I'm naturally surprised in a happy way all the time.
There you go. Again, I just think that people also know that they can always just trust that I will be honest and they won't turn around and be like, but you made it seem like, and I'm like, but because as you said, you have a filter. We all have filters. So how we hear things, how we internalize things is never what a person means.
Yeah.
And so I always try to meet people as I know that they will understand me, but never to the point where I'm supporting their illusions. And that's really important because we live in so much illusion during our karmic stage, right? Our lives are built upon, it's a house of cards.
Yeah.
And I don't want to necessarily be the one to pull the card for the person so their entire world falls down.
Yeah. Whereas for me, it's like kind of the opposite. Is that like the illusion isn't an illusion at all. It's my heart, and I just need to remember to believe it, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
and
it's
so
just different people.
Exactly. And you can filter that through your heart and say, okay, well, I hear that, but I'm going to choose to believe. And then you recognize you make the choice. And that's what most people have to do because most of them don't realize what they're choosing.
But knowing, for me anyway, knowing that I'm good enough, connecting back to that little girl who sang all day and who believed in the unicorns and rainbows and the love and everything else, leading into that and remembering that is actually what reminds me that I am good enough to create that life that reflects my beliefs. And yeah, it's really tricky it's still sometimes a bit tricky to get there, especially in the pressure cooker and pause moments and all that kind of things where, you know, you look outside of yourself and you're like, the world is like very depressing.
It's so
and
bleak.
Your work wife is piling on
I don't pile on. Oh, fuck off. You're the one who's like, it will only take us 10 seconds to get this done. And I'm like, an hour later. Why are we still at this?
That's why I'm always late for things. But when I was going through my karma, the biggest issue for me was I didn't want to believe what I felt. Like, because I thought they were illusions. I thought they were dreams. I thought they were just like the fairy tale that didn't exist. And actually, the more I chose my heart and it worked out, so the more I listened to my soul, or whatever you want to call it, higher self, higher consciousness plus times a million, the more I started to see actually maybe there's a space for that. Right? And joy and fun and doing everything from that space got me through my karma in ways, because I was able to be like, wait a second, I'm having a good time because I listened to myself and I did this, you know?
Yeah.
So that became a good gauge for me, how I could create my happiness.
When I saw you after, like, post karma, and we were sort of trying to learn magic a bit and feel our way through the dark, because that's how we do it. It all came from that wanting more. I want more for my life. Because I do recognize that everything that I built really can't serve where I'm at. Maybe I need a new home. Maybe I need to live in a new city. Maybe I need a new job. Maybe I really need to tap into this calling that I've always had but ignored because I didn't think I was good enough to really step into the role that required, or the responsibility that it required.
And it wasn't even necessarily about like decimating every relationship I had, but it was about choosing the ones to nurture that made me feel like they fit, rather than the ones where they were dragging me into a place I no longer existed in.
Right, exactly. And often we efface ourselves to the point where we don't exist in any of our relationships when we're in our karma, right? Because it's all just a reflection of how we really don't feel we belong anywhere. And so we just keep tolerating and we just keep accepting and internalizing and telling ourselves that well, this is all I can have. It's such a critical foundational piece that we cannot talk about magic and bliss without looking back at karma, right? And we can only really see it from this kind of 2020 lens because we're far enough down this road. Fate is such a critical component to bliss that if we didn't understand it in its like nascent stages, we would have never really come to understand bliss. So every time we have to keep looking back at karma, we're doing it from this actual fate lens, which is huge. When we really come out of the karma, it's a bit funny because I know you were just saying last night, like I kind of feel like things are shifting again in a way in which, you know, right now I feel like I'm being held in a womb and things are kind of easy and simple, and I'm feeling like, you know, and that happens in some ways in your karmic undoing process, even though it feels like you're being like put through the washing machine and you're getting thrown around, you sometimes look back and you be like, oh, that poor unconscious person. How sweet. She only meant well.
Yeah.
You know, she was
and
only
also,
doing
it didn't
her
feel
best.
like, I mean, listen, the one thing about karma I will say that I think about all the time, and I always kind of, I don't like actually think about it, because when things pop up in general about like any type of like growth, is that your feelings around it are normally so much bigger than they warrant to be, because it's so much more than just that moment, right?
Yeah.
Like crying and shaking about sending a text, or like making something feel like it's such a big deal. Well, it's not necessarily the thing that's the big deal. It's whatever you're learning that's the big deal.
You're having to own the fact that that person required to step in and send that text is a person you've denied.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And so you're having to make room for a bigger version of yourself. And it hurts.
It hurts, yeah.
It hurts. It like physically hurts to make space for her. And that's that bit of consciousness, right? That like is where we have to grow. Otherwise things don't end up changing course. And that's really what we're trying to do when we're trying to escape out of that karmic prison, is we're trying to change the course of our lives.
What do I want from my life? What do I want to experience from my life?
Yeah. Yeah.
And ultimately all those come down to what will express my happiness and reflect that happiness back to me.
Yes, exactly. So when we're really way past our karmic undoing process and out of hell, and we're really beginning to design our lives as an expression of that happiness, fate is a massive factor in that, right? Because fate is the big design as we have created it that shows our fullest expression of and possibilities around that happiness, which then brings us to bliss. So when we know that we are good enough, and we know that the statement is I am good enough or I am God enough, we're recognizing the divine fully. Okay, now when we are in our most divine selves is when we have created our fate, the big tapestry of all the possibilities and probabilities and potential of our lives and all that we can experience. Now, mind you, because we're in our body for such a short time, we may not be able to traverse that fate path, if you will, but we try to get there as best as we can. Now, what moves us along that fate line, or our fate lines really, is bliss, right? The path to happiness to get to bliss, which is effectively divine reunion, where the divine gets to reunite with the divine. So if we are our fullest divine selves, we have that experience of, okay, right, I am the divine. Cool, I'm whole again. And now I get to move through, and what the divine wants most is bliss, which is why it's always been about the pursuit of happiness. We have just misunderstood happiness for a really long time. If fate is the driving force behind our happiness, once we get to happiness, which is, as we've said, I'm going to say it here, and I'm going to make sure we say it so we don't have to amend it. Happiness is a constantly moving process, right? It's a constantly moving concept. It is not a state of being. The state of being is bliss. So happiness is constantly moving because we're moving toward bliss, right?
Once you're in bliss, you're in bliss.
Exactly. But we're dynamic beings. That is how we grow and evolve. So we have to constantly be moving. Once we're in bliss, we're moving, but in a different way. We remain dynamic beings, but it's always going to be in a state of bliss.
You can't fall out of it.
No. And life no longer is about growth and evolution, but it's about maintaining bliss.
That sounds like the dream.
Because our fates are going to match that. See if you can stay with me on this. So our fates match that happiness. So once we realize it fully, everything starts to take off. Because time and space cease to matter or play into our lives the way that they used to. As we kind of see, when it comes to time and space, even when we're in our karmic undoing process, it shifts. We're no longer beholden to time. We're no longer counting down days. It's all arbitrary, and it's kind of in our heads.
Yeah.
Because we're also dealing with a 3D concept.
Yeah.
Which is why we have that push-pull, because we don't operate from that space, but we're kind of forced to.
But we're also not forced to. We can just do it and keep going and trust that it'll get done.
Exactly. When we can really get used to that. Because as you said, practice makes normal, right? Or experience makes normal, as you say. So the more we do it, the more we get comfortable with it. So when time and space cease to matter, we're no longer living by a place of goals, right? Or we're never living from a place of goals or marked by single events or moments. This is my deadline, and this is when the book comes out, or this is when, I have to do this, or this is the date of X important period of my life. We're just in constant flow. So once you're in this space of happiness, we're not saying bliss yet, but once your fate and your happiness are lined up, it is literally everything, everywhere, all at once, like the film. Except they got one thing a bit off. Because to them, the linchpin was love. Right? That love underpinned it all, but it was actually bliss. So if it is everything, everywhere, all at once, it means that we have to be multidimensional beings. You cannot be a multidimensional being if you are in your karma, or if you are in your anywhere in your karmic undoing process, or even just out of it. Because even if you're in your nascent stages of you're out of hell and you're designing your life, everything, everywhere, all at once is a lot. Yeah. You have got to come into it organically. You have to come into it from the internal workings of your consciousness in order to be so adapted to it, it feels normal and it feels natural. Otherwise, you will be so overwhelmed, you become paralyzed.
So how would you describe everything, everywhere, all at once for you or for me? Or in a real way that doesn't involve a donut or a bagel?
Yeah, for anyone watching the movie or who has seen the movie. What I tell people when they're still heading in that direction, and I can see it, but they don't know what that means, and I would never use the words that I'm using today. But multidimensionality looks like you have a lot of hands in many pots. Now, this isn't the same as
multitasking.
It's not like when you're in your karma and you're just really busy with your massive list of things to do. All of those pots are all reflective of your purpose, right? They're all reflective of your fate lines. They're all reflective of your skill sets. It's all you.
So maybe
No.
I'm singing a song, maybe I'm doing a session, maybe I'm recording a podcast, maybe I'm writing a book, maybe I'm fixing a website, maybe
Yes.
I'm hanging out with my friends and laughing about it, maybe I'm in a really nice relationship, maybe I'm having really good food, maybe I'm doing all of those things technically at exactly the same time. Because I'm thinking about all of those things, and there's all of those things are within me.
Yes.
So every step I take, I'm also existing as the person who's doing all of those things.
Yes.
And who will do those things and who have done those things.
Yes. And to add to that, you're living it fully because you're present in everything you're doing at the same time. That is what multidimensionality looks like. That is an incredibly, incredibly advanced and difficult thing for somebody trapped in a human body can do. Because we are so linear. Now, you and I always joke that we're like one-trick ponies. What are we really doing? We're like, it always just seems like the same thing, even if it's not.
Yeah.
And that is why everyone's a one-trick pony when you're in your purpose. Because your purpose is always going to be born and sourced from the same thing. And it's always going to look or feel similar, even if it is expresses somewhat distinctly.
Yeah.
Because you're singing versus you're writing versus you're recording somewhat distinct, but still an expression of you, which is why we're like, one trick pony. Now, imagine then, okay, as this multidimensional purpose, who is on the path to bliss because you recognize that you're the divine and that you are connected to all things as the divine, living from your fate, headed towards bliss, that you are so expanded in that your awareness could be in other places at the same time. So your consciousness is so expanded that while I am not the other person on another continent, I can tap into them so fully, I understand their experience.
And you'd have to be an empath to do that.
No. It's a level of connection.
Because you know that they're divine.
Exactly.
And you're divine. So you connect on the fact that you connect on the divinity.
No. You're connecting to their fullest self as you are so in your fullest self.
Okay. Yeah, actually makes sense.
Yeah. But it is not something that almost anyone can really do. It's actually quite beautiful. It's really, really beautiful. It is such an elevated connection to humanity through the divine that is really what oneness is. That's where you can say there is beauty in this. Because I am all. That is the fullest of all experiences. Like that is where, like if anyone, and I don't mean you fake it because you just try to imagine it, but once you can get there, it just means that your capacity to exist fully beyond the limits of your physical body and nature, you're there.
Thank you for listening. For more information, articles, and inspiration, find us at karmasmybitch.com and at karmasmybitch.insta.
And if you liked what you heard, please subscribe and leave us a review.